You're walking through a crowded hallway and someone bumps into you. Harder shoulder hits yours. They barely slow down. And yet, the word leaves your mouth automatically. Sorry. Or maybe you're in a conversation where someone misunderstands what you said. They interrupt you, raise their voice, accuse you of something you didn't mean. And before you even finish explaining, you apologize. You apologize when someone else is late. You apologize when someone else makes a mistake. Sometimes you even apologize for asking a simple question. From the outside, it looks like insecurity, like you think everything is your fault. But inside, it feels different. It feels automatic, almost reflexive, like your brain decided long ago that saying sorry is the safest move in the room. So the real question isn't why you apologize so much. The real question is, what was your mind trying to protect? Because people who apologize, even when it isn't their fault, usually aren't weak. They're usually highly aware, and for a long time, that awareness kept the peace. First, it's important to understand something simple. You are not broken for doing this. Your brain didn't randomly develop this habit one day. It learned it. Carefully. Quietly. Over time, somewhere along the way, apologizing became a shortcut, a way to smooth tension before it grew bigger, a way to keep conversations from turning into conflict. And the brain loves shortcuts, especially the ones that keep us safe. So if you hear yourself saying sorry when logically you know you didn't do anything wrong, that doesn't mean you're weak. It usually means your mind got very good at reading emotional weather. And when you can sense storms before they start, you learn how to calm the sky quickly, often with one small word: sorry. For many people, this pattern begins with something subtle, a childhood environment where emotions felt unpredictable. Not necessarily chaotic, not always dramatic. Sometimes it's quieter than that. Maybe someone in the house got irritated easily. Maybe tension appeared suddenly and without warning. Maybe the safest role in the room was the peacemaker. So your nervous system adapted. It started scanning people's faces, listening to tone shifts, noticing when conversations felt like they were about to tilt sideways. And when that tension appeared, your brain learned the fastest way to soften it. Apologize. Even if the situation wasn't your fault, even if you weren't responsible. Because the apology wasn't really about blame, it was about restoring calm. Over time, that pattern becomes automatic. You don't think about it. Your body simply reacts, like muscle memory. You sense friction. You offer a soft landing. Sorry. Another reason this happens is something psychologists sometimes call emotional responsibility. Some people grow up feeling responsible not just for their actions, but for the emotional temperature of the entire room. If someone is upset, part of your brain quietly wonders if you caused it. If someone becomes distant, your mind starts replaying recent conversations. Did I say something wrong? Did I miss something? Did I upset them without realizing it? So apologizing becomes a way to close that mental loop. A way to regain stability. Because uncertainty is uncomfortable for the brain, it prefers clear endings, clear explanations. And an apology often gives the mind that closure, even if the situation never required it. You see this a lot in friendships and relationships. Someone else forgets to call. They cancel plans. They misunderstand something small. And yet the person who apologizes is the one who says, "Sorry if I bothered you." Not because they believe they caused the problem, but because their mind is trying to restore harmony. And harmony feels safer than conflict. But here's something interesting. People who apologize like this are often extremely empathetic. They notice shifts in mood quickly. They sense discomfort before anyone says it out loud. That sensitivity can make someone deeply thoughtful, careful with words, aware of how their actions affect others. But it also means their brain sometimes overestimates responsibility. It fills in emotional gaps with self-blame, not because it's accurate, but because it's familiar. And the brain prefers familiar stories, even when those stories aren't fair. About halfway through life, something curious often begins to happen. And this is where it gets interesting. The brain starts to question old patterns. The same person who once apologized automatically may begin to pause. Not always, but sometimes. They might notice the word sorry forming, and suddenly wonder why it's there. Why did I apologize just now? Nothing actually happened. What's changing isn't personality. It's awareness. Because as people grow older, their brain gathers more emotional data, more experiences, more moments where they realize something important. Not every tension in a room belongs to them. Not every misunderstanding is their responsibility. And the brain slowly begins to adjust its map of the world. But the habit doesn't disappear overnight, because for many years, apologizing worked. It reduced arguments. It softened interactions. It kept relationships from escalating into something louder or harsher. So the brain still keeps it in its toolbox, like an old strategy it used during storms. Sometimes that strategy appears even when the weather is calm. Another layer of this behavior has to do with identity. If someone spends years being the thoughtful one, the accommodating one, the person who smooths things over, that role becomes part of how they see themselves. And humans protect their identities. Not consciously, but quietly. If being the considerate one helped you belong, helped you avoid rejection, helped people feel comfortable around you, your mind learns to preserve that role. Apologizing becomes part of that identity, a signal to others that you're aware, that you care, that you're paying attention, even when no apology is required. But underneath all of this, something deeper is happening. Apologizing regulates emotion. It's not just a social behavior. It's a nervous system response. When tension appears in a conversation, the body reacts, heart rate shifts, muscles tighten slightly. The tension sharpens. Your brain wants the situation to return to equilibrium, so it reaches for something that has worked before. An apology acts like a small emotional reset button. It lowers defensiveness. It signals cooperation. It tells the other person, I'm not here to fight. In many ways, it functions like an anchor dropped into choppy water. The moment you say sorry, the conversation often softens. The emotional current slows down, and your nervous system feels that shift. Relief. That's why the habit becomes so deeply wired. Because it works. It restores calm. It reduces uncertainty. It creates predictability in moments where social tension might otherwise grow. For your brain, it's not weakness. It's regulation. Like wrapping a blanket around a moment that suddenly felt cold. Over time, people who apologize like this often develop another awareness. They begin to see the difference between responsibility and sensitivity. They realize they can still care deeply about others without absorbing every emotional ripple around them. But even when that understanding grows, the instinct to apologize sometimes lingers, and that's okay. Because that instinct came from somewhere meaningful. It came from a mind that learned to value harmony, from a nervous system that wanted people around it to feel safe, from a person who paid attention to emotional details that others often miss. So if you sometimes hear yourself apologizing when it wasn't your fault, that moment doesn't mean you're fragile. It doesn't mean you lack confidence. More often, it means your brain spent years learning how to keep peace in places where tension could easily grow. And habits like that don't come from weakness. They come from adaptation, from awareness, from a quiet intelligence about human emotions. And once you understand that, the word sorry starts to look a little different. Not like a flaw, but like a small echo of all the moments your mind tried to make the world around you feel calmer.